if what your goal was just to create a memorization game that players could just play instead of reading or instead of doing something else, then that's cool. But at the heart of it, it's still going to feel like those other things. Because once the novelty wears off about playing this game, it's just going to be another memorization technique. Got iced coffee today. It's so hot over here, man. Hi there, welcome to Games Over More Coffee. This is a channel that's dedicated to stuff that is not Games Over Coffee, my first channel. This is a show called Dev Brew, so welcome to Dev Brew. This is where indie developers submit their games, and I do my best to give feedback on their game design. What we try to do here is look at the game that you've created, and if it's not doing what you want it to do, we try to figure out why. I'm gonna be talking to the developer, so if it sounds like I'm not talking to you, it's because I'm talking to the developer. First of all, I just gotta comment on the game itself. I really like this idea of education in games because I feel like education in itself, when you're teaching students, when you're a teacher teaching students, a lot of teaching methods are based on basically repetition and memorization, and not so much about understanding base concepts first. And what's really cool about video games is that it's all about understanding base concepts first and then building that skill from there. You can make games that teach students really well by instilling basic concepts first that are self-driven, by the player. And so I really like this idea. And it's something that I've always known as gamification. I think gamification actually means something a little bit different, but I think about it in this more design-heavy way. And I really like the idea of the way I think about it, about building concepts in the same way that you would build, a concept for going through like a Mario game or something like that. So the things that popped out to me in this game were the controls, the teaching, the collectibles, and the objective. The controls in this game feel a little stilted. They just feel just a little off. The way the Koala moves doesn't feel very good, and it's because he stutters every now and then. In fact, I played this on my computer and my phone, and on the phone version, whenever he would walk vertically, he would pause for a long time in between tiles. So like I would hold down and he would walk one step and then stay there for a bit, and walk another step and stay there for a bit. The PC didn't seem to have any problems, but there were hiccups with the movement where he kept stopping every now and then. So the controls feel bad, and I think they feel bad because of the way they're applied. They're not necessarily just bad controls. I don't think you can have inherently bad controls. In fact, I talked about this in my video, wherever it is. The basic point to that video is that controls can be any way the developer wants them to be, but depending on what the player is expecting, then the controls might feel really bad. So for example, when I'm playing this game, I'm immediately reminded of pretty much every other game that's top-down when I'm moving and it doesn't move exactly like, Legend of Zelda, or it doesn't move exactly like, other top-down games. It feels a little weird. It feels strange. And what exacerbates this is there's some challenges in this game that are like timing challenges, basically, where like you have a little monster walking around and you have to make sure not to, be hit by the monster. So you have to move. And so because it's focusing your efforts on movement, then you start to feel when the controls stop working for that kind of challenge. The controls can stay the same if they were just about navigating like an area, and if they were just about navigating a maze or something like that, they're totally fine for that. They work. But if you're testing the player on something that they can't control very well, then they're not gonna feel good, This could be a lot worse though. This could be a platformer. I do want to say, by the way, if you have a game and you want something like this similar done for yours, but you don't want to wait for me to randomly pick your game after you submit it to me, you can go to Fiverr. I have a Fiverr profile. Okay, so another thing I want to talk about is the teaching. So obviously that's what this game is made for, is to teach Hiragana. So that's what we're talking about. So the way that this game teaches is primarily through two things. There's coin collecting and these ninja quizzes that come up. I really like the idea of the ninja just popping out like it's a pop quiz. I thought that was so cute. I love that. There's a little thing that screwed me up when I was playing it, and it was the ninja pops up before you learn some hiragana. For example, in the beginning of the game, I was just walking around at that first little area, and I didn't know what I was doing yet. I was getting acquainted with the controls and everything. And then a ninja popped up and it was like, hey, what does this mean? And I was like, I don't know. You would think that this wouldn't be too much of a problem, right? Because what happens is that the the ninja pops up and say you get it wrong, you don't really lose any points or anything like that. It just reiterates what you were supposed to know already, what you're supposed to know. It shows you the little description of, of what you're supposed to memorize or whatever. The reason why this is an issue is because it discourages the player from wanting to play the game. If you're immediately, met with adversity and you don't know how to overcome it, that can be really aggravating. I would set a flag or somehow program it, so that the ninja doesn't pop up and teach you about certain hiragana until after you've already collected that specific coin. After you have that coin, then the ninja can pop up, but before then, he cannot. So another thing that I want to talk about was the coin collecting. So the coin collecting in here is primarily how you learn the hiragana. And so there's 5 coins in each stage. You go and you collect your coin, and then it shows you the symbol, and then you draw the symbol. And by the way, that drawing is really, really cool. I really like how you've done the little glowy dots, and you have to click and drag, or on your phone touch and hold. It didn't actually work too well on the phone for me. On the computer, it feels like it works because I have to follow a line very specifically. But on the phone, it's a little more intuitive because, used to drawing shapes and stuff like that. But to follow something so specific, and especially since your finger covers up the dots when you're drawing on your phone, unless this is on a tablet, I guess that would work. It felt better on the computer than it did on my phone. I like how you did that little drawing part, but specifically, after you draw the shape, you're shown how to memorize this specific symbol by utilizing like a little picture, like it shows like a woman falling on her back or someone pulling a sword from the stone. And I thought that was great. It was something that was easily connected to my mind, and I just immediately captured, that image. And every time that I was tested later, I imagined, I was like, okay, which one? Oh, that one looks like the sword. Yeah, that's the one. And it always helped. It was really good. However, I have a little issue with this. The way that we're teaching here, these symbols are basically flashcards. The reason why I have an issue with that is because it's just memorization, and that's all it is. I love what it is. I love the memorization technique. I think that's great. I don't love the game for the memorization techniques. I wouldn't play this game again because I like the memorization techniques. It's more like something that's in a classroom already, but made into a game. It does not feel like a game at all. It feels like a classroom digitized, and I'll get more into that. But that's one of the things about learning this hiragana, is it doesn't feel like a skill that I'm building up. Like in a game, usually that's what you have is a core concept first. Like Mario, you learn how to jump, and then you're presented with challenges later that increase in difficulty and then increase in complexity. And you start to use that concept of jumping and with something else. You start, running and jumping. You start running and jumping and balancing. You start jumping through stuff and, use it for all different kinds of challenges. So in this hiragana, I never felt like there was a skill I was building up. It felt like I was taking on a memorization technique, and then I would do that just all the time. And it felt very repetitive because of that. The memorization itself is not repetitive, and I felt rewarded when I would beat the ninja at a quiz, and it felt really good when I got it correct. The only skill that I was building up was basically memorizing symbols, because the core concept of memorization is just memorizing, right? I don't feel like I can get any better at memorizing. At least that's not the skill I was trying to build up. But first thing, if you like this kind of content, what would really help is if you shared it with other people that you thought could enjoy this kind of style of content, this design breakdown stuff. So the biggest thing with this game about gamification, and this game specifically, is the building of skill and the overall objective, the goal setting. Now, if you think about a regular game like Legend of Zelda, in Legend of Zelda you have an inventory screen that has maybe 1 or 2 objects on it, but you see all these other spaces that you need to fill up and a shape in the middle that you need to collect, and then you collect a piece and you find out, oh, I'm supposed to collect all those pieces, or oh, I'm supposed to collect a bunch of different items, and that sets a goal for you. In Super Mario Bros. It was the same way, but they did it far more simply, and it was just numbers. There's an overall objective that the player needs to get to, that they innately understand. There was a goal in this game, but it was far too little. It was very small. It was collect all the 5 coins. And I thought that was great to have the little inventory on the HUD that you can have, these 5 circles on the top that were just dotted lines, or I think they were dotted lines. And then when you collect a coin, then it shows up right there, and then you have the rest, and you're like, oh, looks like I need to collect the rest of the coins. But then it's just that over and over. And so if there was a greater way of doing that, if there was like I don't know, maybe this is a stupid idea, but I'm thinking, what if you collected 1 coin per level that was, available at the very end? Maybe you collect the level coin or whatever, and that shows up with all the coins on the side, and you look and you're like, oh, looks like there's a total of 6 levels or whatever. That's a dumb idea. I just came up with it, but it demonstrates what I'm talking about, which is, the overall goal. So those were things that just popped out to me. Now I want to connect them back with things that you mentioned specifically when you filled out the submission form. You mentioned the thing that you wanted me to take a look at was specifically just the first level. You said the first level might be enough, and I played around 5 to 6 levels, I think. I can't remember if it was 6. I thought it was really good. The first level's they're all actually designed really well. I thought they didn't look to me like something I needed to comment on, and that's a good thing because they were all just self-explanatory. They were designed really well enough to where I could just figure out things by myself. I like that when I started with the little spaceship, that was really cool, that you have a little area that you can kind of get to know your controls first before you navigate yourself out, and then you have the world to explore. I really like that. I also asked in the submission form what you were most proud of and what you were least proud of when you designed your game. The thing that you were most proud of, you said that the quiz, you felt like the quiz and the drawing stuff was pretty well programmed because you put a lot of effort into it. You felt like you did enough to not make it feel monotonous. And there's that idea of monotony. The quizzes themselves are not monotonous at all. I don't think at all. I never felt bored with the quizzes. The quizzes are perfectly fine. So I think you did a really good job on that. But if you are concerned with monotony, the game has other monotonous feeling with it. The quizzes themselves aren't monotonous, but other things are. Not being able to build a skill or have an idea of what the overall goal is. The formula of each level as you're going forward, feels like it's just gonna continue that way. I don't know for how long. It feels like it's just gonna keep going. The thing that you said you were least proud of was the integration of Hiragana, and you wanted to do more with it. And I totally agree. And this is where I'm kind of culminating my thoughts here. I think having an overall goal or an overall objective that the player is building a skill toward would fix this issue, would make the Hiragana play more of a role. At the end of the first level, when I got to that guy, I went to him first before, collecting all the coins. And he said, you need to collect all the coins before getting past me. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's cool. So I'll go collect all the coins. And as the coins were teaching me each of these symbols, I imagined, oh, I'm gonna have to use all these symbols at the end. Like, I guess that's the boss fight. Maybe that's the boss at the end there who won't let me by, and he's gonna test me on like several symbols or something. That didn't happen, but that is what I was expecting. The game does need some sort of skill for the player to latch onto and to call their own and to express themselves with. Somehow the player needs to express themselves with their knowledge of Hiragana after they've put in so much effort in learning them. And I would still make the learning different, maybe in a different game, because you seem to understand exactly what you're going for, and that's totally fine. But for me, for the kind of gamification that I would like to see, I want to see a skill that's built up from, like I said, from the core. Whatever the skill is that you decide that the player is going to take hold of, it should somehow make them feel like they're demonstrating a part of themselves. When I'm playing Mario and I feel like I have the skill to run and jump at the same time, or Zelda when I know how to slash and dodge and whatnot, those are all things that I'm demonstrating because I've built up from a very basic skill. I don't know how that would associate with language. I would need to work on trying to figure something like that out. I can't just make up something on the spot. But whatever that skill is, the challenges that you present to the player afterwards would have to build that skill up and up and up until they feel like they're a master at whatever it is that you're teaching them. What I would want to ask is, why is this game a game? And that's not an insult. It's not meant to be an insult. It's meant to make you think about why you've created an interactive way for the student to learn Hiragana in this fashion, because this is an engaging way to learn, memorization techniques. It's a lot more engaging than just looking at a book or reading a flashcard, but it's basically the same thing. And the reason why I want to say that is because gamification in general, I feel, can be designed to teach more than it is just to replicate. If what your goal was just to create a memorization game that players could just play instead of reading or instead of doing something else, then that's cool. But at the heart of it, it's still going to feel like those other things. Because once the novelty wears off about playing this game, it's just going to be another memorization technique. It won't be a building of a skill. And so that's what I really want to get at there. And that's the reason why gamification is so interesting to me, because I feel like you can build a skill. I feel like you can build that concept in the player, whatever it may be. If it's going to be math, there's certain concepts that you learn in math, or in language, if there's certain syntax that you can teach or whatever. I'm not a teacher, so I don't know these things that you can build into a game as a skill, but I do know it can be done because there's design here that you can do it with. Every game ever made is a player learning. That is what games are about learning. So if your game is not doing what you want, that's when you should ask the question of, why is my game a game? But if the game is precisely what you want, if that's exactly what you wanted, was to create basically an electronic form of flashcards or reading or whatever, then you've succeeded. You've done that. But when it comes down to it, about why games exist in the first place, I mean, they can exist for any reason, but in my mind of this specific definition that I have of gamification, I feel like you could do more with it. There's something really interesting there that you could sink your teeth into. That is pretty much everything that I have to say about this game, and I really want to thank you for submitting this game, because it's a really interesting, like I said before, to look at a game that's actually being used by a teacher. I think that's so cool. I'm really pushing for gamification and things like education, because I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a really, really good thing to chase. This game is doing something well, right? I played through it without getting tired immediately. It didn't seem like just a regular education game. So you do have stuff in here that works. And I apologize, if it feels like all I was doing was criticizing, but that's what I'm here to do. That's the way that I deconstruct games. But I do think you have something here that's really good. I think if you continue down this path, I think you'll create some really, really interesting interactions later on that can create really good gamified experiences of education, if that is what your goal is. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'm gonna drink coffee now. Goodbye.